April Fool's Day, 65. Dearest Suzie, I hope this letter finds you all right. We have not had any mail in the last 2 days. There is some trouble with the airlines that is supposed to carry our mail. They are on strike, I guess, so there is no telling when we will get mail. At least I hope my letters are getting out to you. I still haven't heard from Minnie or Mike. Today has been, without a doubt, the hottest day that we have had, although I understand that it will get hotter. The highest temperature was 104. I still have a headache from the heat. Not that it is much better tonight. We had an assault today, but we didn't really have any action. We never had a round fired at us. I'm glad to hear about the weather being so nice right now at home. I can imagine the orange perfume in the air. There is a smell in the air over here that is almost unbearable, and I don't think all the flowers in the world could cover it up. I had forgotten how bad it was, or maybe I was getting used to it, until I went to Bangkok. The air was so fresh there that I almost died when I got back here. This whole country smells like an open cesspool. Day before yesterday, the colonel, who is the senior advisor for this area, came out and told us that there was a battalion of VC about 2 miles south of the runway, and they planned to mortar us that night. So we all went out to see if we could find them. We searched for about an hour and couldn't find a trace. Then we flew over a small outpost, and the troops in it were waving and jumping up and down. We decided that we had better land and see what was wrong. I had the senior advisor on my ship, so I was going to land so he could talk to them. As I made my approach to the open field by the outpost, I flew right over a minefield. My rotor wash set one of them off, and it blew some holes in the tail of my chopper. We decided not to land after that. So we sent another chopper in, and he found out that the VC battalion had passed that outpost about 2 hours before. They had killed 2 Vietnamese troops and wounded 3 others. So our ship brought out their dead and wounded, and we continued our search. A little while later, we noticed an awful lot of men crossing an open field, some walking and some riding water buffalo. The colonel was sure they were VC, and he wanted to land by a couple of them and search them. So we picked out a couple of likely suspects and landed near them. I was scared to death because there were over 100 men in that open field, although none of them had any weapons that we could see. Anyway, as we were landing, the Vietnamese major that we were carrying in another ship begged us not to land. He kept saying, shoot them, they are all VC, but we landed anyway. As we approached our 2 suspects, they got down on their knees and put their hands over their heads. The colonel and our crew chief jumped out and searched them and questioned them. They said that they were only poor rice farmers and hated VC and begged us to please let them live. So, we left them and took off. The Vietnamese major kept insisting that they were VC and we should kill them, but it is very hard to shoot unarmed men. So we never fired a round. We found out later that they were part of the same group that attacked the outpost. If we'd only been sure, we could have had a field day and killed over 100 of them. Anyway, that was how I spent one of my days. I hope you save my letters for if I ever want to write a book. This is the only record I have. I stopped keeping a diary after the first massacred outpost I saw. Well, I guess that is enough war news for one night. I love you all very much, and I miss you more than I can ever tell you. Kiss the boys for me and tell them that I love them. All my love. Bill. Poppy begins today's letter by talking about heat, headaches, and a mail strike. But it doesn't take long for it to shift into one of the most morally complex and emotionally fraught letters we've seen so far. What starts as a routine update about an assault mission quickly becomes a first-hand account of how war blurs the line between caution and cruelty, between survival and regret. The day began with a report. A battalion of Viet Cong just 2 miles south of the runway and a warning that they were planning to mortar the base that night. Poppy and his crew were sent out to find them. While approaching an outpost, Poppy's helicopter inadvertently set off a landmine with its rotor wash. The explosion ripped holes in the tail of the chopper, though no one was injured. But the most interesting moment in this letter comes later, when they spot over 100 men moving across an open field. Some were walking, others rode water buffalo. None of them appeared armed. And yet, the senior South Vietnamese officer on board insisted that they were Viet Cong and begged the Americans to open fire. Instead, they landed. The 2 men they approached dropped to their knees, raised their hands over their heads, and begged for their lives, claiming they were rice farmers. Poppy and his crew let them go. Later they learned that those men had been part of the same unit that attacked the outpost, killing 2 South Vietnamese troops and wounding 3 others. If we had only been sure, he writes, we could have had a field day and killed over 100 of them. This is the difficulty of counterinsurgency warfare and a moral fog that clouds nearly every decision. What does it mean to kill someone who doesn't have a weapon in their hands? What if they did just hours ago? What if they will tomorrow? This isn't just an account of Popi's day. It's a moment where the ethics of war crash headfirst into the instinct of survival. And in his writing, you can feel the ache of not knowing what the right decision was, or even if such a thing exists in a war like this. There's also a quiet tragedy in the way he ends his story. Not with righteous anger, not even with shame, but with resignation. I stopped keeping a diary after the first massacred outpost I saw, he writes. If I ever want to write a book, this is the only record I have. This letter is actually the one which gives me the confidence to do all this work, to know that what I'm doing is what he wanted. I've been told all the stories about how he wanted to share his experiences with the world one day, but whether it be because of his trauma, his alcoholism, or his fear that he'd be a bad writer, he never did. Now I get to do that for him. I think that's pretty cool. Also, we finally have an answer of why he stopped his journal. A massacred outpost. This letter reminds me that not all war stories are stories of action or bravery. Some are stories of hesitation, of moments when the line between right and wrong wasn't just blurry, it was invisible. The photo I chose for today shows a group of men and a few children standing on the side of the road. Some are standing on bicycles. Others are wearing conical hats. Who are these people? Were they also NVA soldiers nestled into this group that Popi and his friends didn't know about? Did they eventually shoot at the U.S. soldiers? There's uncertainty in this photo, just like his letter. Dearest Suzie, today has been a very quiet one. I went to Saigon today to get 2 ships to replace the ones we lost yesterday, so I have nothing to report except that I love you. We didn't even get any mail today. I got this map from Stars and Stripes. I thought you might like to keep up with what's going on over here. Do you know where Sandy is over here? I asked about him in Saigon today, but I couldn't find anything out. I will close for today. Sending all my love. I miss you all. All my love, Bill. Have a happy Easter. It was in the 6th grade that I was presented the opportunity to do my first substantial project in history. I'd grown up always curious about the past and got so excited in the 4th grade when we were first introduced to Florida's history in the weeks leading up to our field trip to St. Augustine. Though I'd always gone to STEM public schools, I always loved history the most out of any subject. The project was for a competition, National History Day. I decided I would do my work on my grandfather, about his time as a medevac helicopter pilot in Vietnam. The category for the competition was Innovation in History, Impact and Change. I knew I could do a project on that. Hell, want to talk about impact and change? Let me call my grandfather. He can tell you all about how medevac changed things for the better. I decided I would do a documentary with my friend Matt. He did all of the editing, I did most of the research. I used a flight log that he kept while overseas and even managed to get an interview with the man himself. It was short, succinct. My grandfather offered little insight, and I was not yet a skilled interviewer. We spoke over the phone during one of his smokes, and after multiple one-word answers, I figured I had gotten enough material for the movie. We placed second at regionals and somewhere lower at states. My middle school history teacher still remembers me because I did that project. I can't help but wonder, after about a decade and a half after I had those conversations with him, what sort of things did his mind jump to when I asked him about Vietnam? What did he think a 12-year-old wanted to hear? He didn't tell any heroic war stories. Popi mentioned Stars and Stripes in this letter, which is a daily newspaper that has been published for and by members of the United States Armed Forces since the Civil War. During the Vietnam War, it served as a vital link between American service members and the outside world. Unlike military propaganda or internal memos, Stars and Stripes operated with editorial independence, often covering the war with a candor that surprised both readers and military leadership. In Vietnam, the newspaper became an important part of daily life for many U.S. troops. It was printed and distributed in-country, often arriving at fire bases and outposts only a few days after publication. The paper included world news, updates from home, sports scores, and features on American pop culture, helping troops feel connected to life beyond the war zone. But it also covered war-related topics, including casualties, morale, and political controversy, with a tone that was sometimes skeptical or even critical of U.S. policy. What made Stars and Stripes unique was its balance. It walked a fine line between being a morale booster and a credible source of journalism. Soldiers read it not just for distraction, but for insight into the war they were fighting, written by their comrades, people who could seemingly understand what they were going through. And while many commanders appreciated the paper's ability to keep troops informed, others worried it could undermine authority or spark dissent, especially as the war dragged on and public opinion shifted. In short, Stars and Stripes gave voice to the complex emotions, frustrations, and experiences of the average service member. It was a battlefield newspaper, but it was also a cultural touchstone, offering both comfort and critique in equal measure. The photo I chose for today depicts a map that he had hung up on the wall in his office. It is from National Geographic and not Stars and Stripes. April 9. Dearest Suzie, I got your letter today saying that you haven't heard from me in 4 days. I imagine when you do, you will get a bunch. There's been a mail problem lately with that airline on strike. I was glad to hear that you were all getting along all right. We haven't flown in 2 days now. Yesterday we went to Saigon for memorial services for 3 of the people we had killed. One of them, they still haven't found his body, so they can't legally say he's dead. But he is. One of the pilots was a guy named Ray Rupchik. He was a real good lead. He came over here with us in the 62nd. His home, by the way, was Lorain, Ohio. I didn't know that until after he was killed. Anyway, we are all very sad to lose all of them. They were all darn good men. Last night, we all went to town, the whole platoon, and proceeded to get stinking drunk. The Vietnamese make a beer that smells and tastes like embalming fluid. Anyway, we were drinking that stuff, it tastes terrible, and I got bombed out of my head. Luckily, we didn't have to fly because I was sick all day today. I have taken 6 aspirin and I still have a headache. Needless to say, I'm sticking to coffee tonight. We finally got the word on that operation where we lost our 4 men. They killed 276 VC and captured a lot more. I'm sure they killed more too, but that is what they counted. The VC always try to carry away their dead if they can. Anyway, it was one of the most successful operations we've ever had over here. In fact, it was one of the best that anyone has had. Of course, that doesn't make up for the men we lost. I asked around Saigon the other day about Sandy, but I couldn't find out anything, so he must have gone to Da Nang. I got a letter from your mother tonight. She always asks how Charlie and I are getting along. I hear from her about once a week. Well, since we aren't flying, news is short. I love you all very much. I'm glad Billy is the man of the house, and tell Brian he is his daddy's boy for sure. I miss you all. Sincerely, Bill. Today's letter captures something we haven't really seen before in Popi's writing, a kind of emotional stillness that comes in the wake of loss. There's no vivid combat story here, no monkeys causing chaos, no weapon systems or rocket ranges. Instead, we find him in a moment of pause, attending memorial services in Saigon, nursing a hangover, and reflecting on the deaths of his friends. Popi's tone is steady, but there's a grief humming underneath the surface. He mentions 3 men lost in an operation, including one whose body was never recovered. He names one of them, Ray Rupchik from Lorain, Ohio. He was a good lead pilot. They came over together, and that's all Popi says. Just enough for us to know that this one hit hard. The rest of the letter doesn't try to process that grief directly. Instead, he talks about the beer, how it tastes like embalming fluid, how the whole platoon got blackout drunk, how the hangover lingers into the next day. It's a different kind of coping than we've seen in earlier letters. A group ritual, almost, among men who don't have time or space to mourn the way civilians do. This is how grief worked in war. Blunt, messy, and buried beneath bravado. What also stands out is the strange juxtaposition. Popi shares the success of the mission that took his friends' lives. They killed 276 VC and captured a lot more, he writes. He calls it one of the most successful operations they've ever had, but then he undercuts it with a single line. Of course, that doesn't make up for the men we lost. That sentence, brief, direct, quiet, says more than a whole paragraph could. It captures the moral dissonance of war. Success is measured in numbers, in bodies, in statistics. But grief doesn't care about body counts. It's personal. It's stubborn. And it lingers even when the mission is technically won. The photo I chose for today is taken from the cockpit of a helicopter. Below is Vietnam, perhaps a rice field or two. In the foreground, however, is a blurry set of weapons for one of the combat helicopters. There are machine guns and rockets. 11. April, 65. Dearest Suzie, I received a letter from you today and was glad to hear from you. I knew you would be a little disappointed about my not wanting you to go to Minnie's right now, but I'm glad that you understand why. I still haven't heard from them. We had another quiet day yesterday. We went to the range yesterday afternoon, and that was all. Last night, however, was another story. We had quite a few people in town, and somebody started a fight with the Vietnamese Marine. He went out and got some of his friends, and they all came back and shot up a few of the bars. We had one man stabbed and one other beat up. It was just plain luck that no one was shot and killed. It is a shame that we have to go out and get shot at by the VC, then when we get a chance to go to town, we have to worry about being shot by the very people we are over here to support. I missed all that excitement, I'm glad to say. Now, town is off limits and no telling how long it will be. Today I set up a folding cot and laid out in the sun for a couple of hours. A few days of that in this hot sun and I should have a good tan. I'm enclosing a newspaper from here. It gives the names of 3 of the men we lost. They still haven't found any proof that the 4th one, Lieutenant Tucker, is dead, so they can't say that he is, but we all know that he's dead. The tragedy is that his family has probably been told that he is missing, so they will still be hoping when there is no hope. How about asking the old man if he knows any Bowmans from McRae? I just thought that he may know the one man's family. Charlie is getting along fine. The rabies scare is over, so he's running loose again. So far, he has not been in any hooches this time. Maybe he has learned his lesson. Well, tell the boys that I miss them, and yes, Brian is my boy. Love you very much, and although this is getting repetitions, I miss you so much. I see that the airline strike is over, so maybe the mail problem will get better. All my love. Bill. In today's letter, Popi writes from a base that's starting to feel the weight of too many quiet days, followed by sudden senseless violence. It's not a letter filled with battlefield drama or big revelations, but instead it's something quieter, and in many ways, more unsettling. He opens, as he so often does, with home, a follow-up to a previous conversation with Meemaw about why he didn't want her to travel to visit family. He thanks her for understanding, though he still hasn't heard from them himself. But quickly, the letter turns from the personal to the chaotic. Last night, he writes, was another story. A fight broke out between some American troops and a Vietnamese Marine in town. What started as a barroom scuffle escalated quickly. The Marine left, returned with friends, and they came back with weapons. Several bars were shot up, one American was stabbed, another beaten. Popi wasn't there. He says he's glad he missed it, but he's shaken by the fact that the very people the Americans are in Vietnam to support had turned their weapons on them in a moment of anger. He has a haunting line. It is a shame that we have to go out and get shot at by the VC. Then when we get a chance to go to town, we have to worry about being shot by the very people we are over here to support. It's a line that reveals a lot about the emotional toll the war has been taking, not just in terms of fear or violence, but in trust. What happens when resentment festers on both sides of a supposed partnership? This wasn't an isolated event. There were growing tensions between U.S. troops and South Vietnamese civilians and soldiers throughout the war, cultural misunderstandings, abuses of power, and the strain of occupation. For American soldiers like Popi, who already had to navigate the dangers of combat, those tensions could explode unexpectedly, even on an off night. The rest of the letter is quiet. He talks about sunbathing on a cot, trying to work on his tan in the relentless heat. He mentions Charlie, who's finally off rabies watch and for now staying out of trouble. And he sends home a copy of a paper listing the names of 3 men who were recently killed. One man's body, Lieutenant Tucker, still hasn't been found, and because of that, he isn't officially considered dead. The tragedy, Popi writes, is that his family has probably been told that he is missing, so they will still be hoping when there is no hope. That line hits hard. It's one of the most emotionally honest things he's written so far. He doesn't try to soften it, doesn't pretend that hope is always a good thing. In this case, it feels like cruelty, a delay of grief, a false sense of possibility that he knows doesn't exist. This letter isn't even about combat. It's about the breakdown of trust in allies, in systems, and maybe even in the ability of the war to ever make sense. It's about the moments of violence that aren't part of a battle but still leave scars. And for just a second, Popi lets us see how exhausting it all is. The photo I chose for today is the sign welcoming people into Vinh Long. It is in Vietnamese, English, and French. By the sounds of this letter, they weren't always welcome in Vinh Long. $264 to go. April 12th, 1965. Dearest Suzie, I got a letter from you today, which I enjoyed very much. I hope by now the mail is straightened out and you get my letters more regularly. I am also glad that you went and got the boy some good shoes. Just be real careful when you take those pictures and get me some good ones. I wish you could get your new camera by Easter, but I doubt it. I sure would like some slides of you and the boys. I'm kind of glad that you didn't send me anything for Easter. I appreciate the thought, but that is too much money for candy. Anyway, you all have a good Easter, and I will be thinking of you. I think it is real nice that Billy is in his school play. Tell him that I'm just sorry that I couldn't be there to see it. We had another operation today, but it didn't amount to anything. We did more sitting around than anything. Tomorrow, we just have range day all day. I guess I will spend the whole day shooting my hog. We had a USO show here tonight, but it wasn't much good. They had a ventriloquist who was fair, but the rest of it frankly stank. Most of them do. Well, I have to get up early tomorrow, so I will close for tonight. You didn't mention in the last letter, but I assume that you got the check that I sent you okay. Love you all very much. Sincerely, Bill. Growing up, my dad always told me about Popi's war stories. I never heard them from Popi. If my uncles ever visited, you wouldn't be able to get any of them to shut up about what a war hero their father was. He had oak leaf clusters for his meritorious air medals. He turned down 2 Purple Hearts because he felt like they should go to someone who deserved them. Hell, just dig through his old things. You'll find his Bronze Star. If you ask one of my uncles, he got it during the battle that We Were Soldiers depicted on the big screen. If you watched closely, you'd be able to see Popi standing there next to Mel Gibson, heroically saving the day. He was there all right. Never mind the fact he left Vietnam about 3 months before the movie took place, but my uncle still swears that's what it's about. A few years ago for Christmas, I decided I would do something special for my dad. No one seemingly ever did anything special for my dad. It was always either for my brother, or me, or my mom. My dad worked hard and rarely complained, except for when he would give an infamous walked to school and snow uphill both ways sort of lecture, which lost a ton of its punch considering that he grew up in Florida, which possesses neither snow nor significant enough hills to climb up, but I digress. I was sneaky. I picked up my grandmother from her trailer in Georgia, and before my arrival, I asked her to dig out my grandfather's old things. When he died, he left it all to me. I was the only grandkid who had ever taken an interest in his stuff. She reluctantly dug it out of the closet, her only protests a sign of keeping the past in the past and not thinking about things that may upset her. I took the only piece of his uniform he kept, a dress shirt, and placed all of his medals where a website on Google said they should go. Then I took scans of his old photos and printed out 3. I placed all of these things in a shadow box for my dad. When I presented it to him, he was silent for a long while. At first, I thought he didn't like it. Then I realized he was trying not to cry. He has since hung it up proudly in his office next to his lithograph of a Huey and the framed shirt that Charlie used to wear. Even though Popi might not have ever really wanted to celebrate holidays in Vietnam, I'm happy that as a family, we can still find ways to use his experiences to make our holidays special, even if they make things more sentimental rather than joyous. The photo I chose for today depicts some rivers or canals and rice fields. It is an aerial photo depicting the type of terrain he would typically have flown over. April 1965. Dearest Suzie, no mail today, so I don't have a letter to answer, but I thought I'd write anyway. Today was pretty long for us. It started off easy enough. I went to the range this morning and shot up loads of rockets. We were there to go out again in the range this afternoon, but just as we took off, we got a call that one of our ships had went down. So we took off to find it. When we did find it, it was Lewis lit. Nobody was hurt, and he made a good landing. Our maintenance people flew a new engine out and put it in and flew the ship out. We finally finished this evening at 7:30, but it was all worth the work. That is one ship the VC couldn't destroy. Lieutenant Tucker, the other pilot that we lost, was officially listed as dead today, So they are having services for him in Saigon tomorrow. We could go, but I don't feel like going through another memorial service right now. As far as I'm concerned, the services we had last week was for him also. So I'm not going tomorrow. Otherwise, things remain the same with me. I'm getting along okay. Just eating my heart out with loneliness and love for you and my 3 sons. I miss you all very much, and I'm still counting days. 163. All my love, Bill. Today's letter is short, but a little heavy, though not in the ways you might expect. Popi writes after a long day, one that started with a rocket range run and quickly shifted when a fellow pilot's chopper went down. That kind of pivot feels familiar by now. 1 minute, you're training. The next, you're scrambling to rescue a friend. Thankfully, the pilot, Popi's friend, Louis Litt, walked away, and the chopper was repaired and flown out by nightfall. That is one ship the VC couldn't destroy, Popi writes. It's a small victory in a war that rarely offers them. But even in the letter that opens with relief, death is close by. Popi shares that Lieutenant Tucker, the missing pilot from a previous operation, was officially declared dead. The memorial service is scheduled for tomorrow in Saigon, but Popi says he won't go. As far as I'm concerned, he writes, the services we had last week was for him also. He's not being callous. It's exhaustion. These services aren't ceremonial anymore. They're constant reminders. And he's reached a point where mourning isn't something you pause for. It's something you carry. Though there was no mention of it in his letter, I feel it is important to note that April 14th, 1965, the day after this was written, marks the beginning of the U.S. military's Operation Fact Sheet. Beginning in 1965, Operation Fact Sheet was part of a broader effort by the United States Information Service to push anti-communist messaging deep into rural parts of South Vietnam. Leaflets were a big part of this. Printed materials airdropped over villages or handed out by South Vietnamese soldiers. Each one came with a fact sheet, typically on a single sheet of paper, often illustrated and sometimes printed in multiple dialects depending on the region. These weren't just basic propaganda. They were carefully tailored to the fears, loyalties, and everyday concerns of the people they targeted. The goal was to counter Viet Cong influence in areas where U.S. and Army control was weak. But the irony of Operation Fact Sheet, and other psyops like it, was how little impact they actually had. It turns out, when your village is caught between 2 fighting forces, what people say in leaflets doesn't matter nearly as much as who controls the land you're standing on, and sometimes those leaflets made people targets. Popi wasn't directly involved in Operation Fact Sheet, at least not by name, but we know from earlier letters that he participated in similar psychological operations. Flying missions where helicopters broadcast recorded messages through loudspeakers or dropping pamphlets over the countryside. We don't know what those messages said, but odds are they weren't that different from the ones printed on those fact sheets. Appeals to patriotism, warnings about the dangers of communism, promises of a better life under U.S. protection. The photo I chose for today was taken from a cockpit. The control panel is blurry and in the foreground. In the background are 2 helicopters flying in the air. They appear to be making a turn in formation. April 1965. Dearest Suzie, I received 2 letters from you yesterday and one from the folks. I was glad to get them. Mom told me how she enjoyed keeping Brett that night. I still haven't heard from Minnie or Mike. Well, today was another quiet day. We had a mission to escort a general this afternoon, but it didn't amount to much. Things are just the same for me. I spend most of my time counting days. I thought that coming over to the Cobras would keep me busy, but I don't fly as much over here as I did before. I am platoon operations officer, and that takes up some of my time, but I still have a lot of goof-off time. We have a mission tomorrow, but I don't think it will amount to much. Oh, just general information. Saturday I have to go down to a town 60 miles south of here called Bac Lieu to get a Vietnamese award. It is called the Cross of Gallantry. Don't ask me why I'm getting it. I have no idea. Oh well. As I've said many times before, I love you very much and can hardly wait to get home. Charlie is the same as always, and I still plan on bringing him home if nothing happens. Kiss the boys for me. All my love, Bill. Today's letter opens with a familiar tone. Popi is responding to letters from home, talking about the boys, Charlie the monkey, and the long stretch of days still ahead. At this point in his deployment, he's clearly feeling the drag of time. He thought transferring to the Cobras would keep him busy, but now he finds himself with more downtime than he expected. For all the danger that came with medevac and troop transport missions, at least they broke up the monotony. This kind of in-between space, not in combat, not at home, is where a lot of these letters are starting to live. But buried in the middle of the letter, almost like an afterthought, Popi mentions something remarkable. He's been told to report to Bac Lieu, a town about 60 miles south of his base, to receive a medal from the South Vietnamese government. He writes, "It is called the Cross of Gallantry. Don't ask me why I'm getting it. I have no idea." Also known as the An Dung Boi Tin, the Vietnamese Cross of Gallantry military decoration was awarded by the Republic of Vietnam to recognize acts of valor or heroic conduct in combat. It was the South Vietnamese equivalent of the Bronze Star. American service members were eligible to receive it, especially those who supported ARVN, forces in joint operations, or demonstrated bravery under fire. There were different versions of the award, depending on rank and the level of the act being recognized, individual medals for specific valor, and unit citations that could be awarded collectively. The one Popi is likely receiving is the Individual Cross of Gallantry, with Palm, a distinction reserved for personal heroism at the Corps level. This means someone, somewhere, noticed something he did. Now, the fact that Popi doesn't know exactly what he's being honored for says something about how decorations worked during the war. Sometimes they were issued broadly during major operations, sometimes they were based on recommendations passed through several hands, and the recipient wouldn't be told the full details. It's also possible Popi's award was connected to one of the combat missions or near crashes he's written about in the past letters. He certainly earned it, whether he knows the reason or not. What stands out here is how casually he mentions it. There's no bravado, no excitement, just a line in a letter, followed by more talk about the boys and Charlie and his hope to come home soon. It makes you wonder how much Popi downplayed the weight of what he was doing, both for his own peace of mind and for Suzie's. The photo I chose for today was taken from his helicopter while it was on the ground. It shows an injured South Vietnamese soldier getting carried on a makeshift carrier, which almost looks like a hammock. They were in the process of bringing him to Popi's helicopter. Perhaps it is the reason he won the Cross of Gallantry. "159 to go. April 17th, 1965. Dearest Suzie, I haven't received a letter from you in 3 days now. I don't know if the mail is just slow or what. We went to a decoration ceremony this morning, and I got my Cross of Gallantry from the Vietnamese, so big deal, huh? Well, I am due for R&R again. I guess I will be going to Saigon tonight. I have 2 nights away from here. Things have been pretty quiet around here. We had an operation yesterday, but it didn't amount to much. That ceremony this morning was quite an experience. First, they read off your name and what you did in Vietnamese, and then one of their generals pins the medal on you, and then they have a bunch of their best-looking young ladies come along and put a wreath around your neck. It is quite a big deal. I wanted to get a picture of the girls and their wreaths, but our photographer got carried away and missed them when they came along. If it hadn't been so hot and tiring standing out in the sun, it would have been funny. We will also get a citation letter. Today they gave us this pink paper to show why we got the medal. Please don't let this get lost. I want to put this with the citation when I get it. But I thought you might like to see it. Well, as I said before, news is short from over here. I love you all and miss you very much. Sincerely, Bill. In this letter, Popi writes home after attending a Vietnamese medal ceremony where he was awarded the Cross of Gallantry. The letter itself is brief. He mentions the heat, the long wait, the wreath placed around his neck by young Vietnamese women in traditional dress, and how their photographer missed the moment. It would have been funny, he writes, if it hadn't been so hot. But reading this letter now, I can't help but think about the role performance plays in war, and not just on the battlefield. Popi's not mocking the ceremony, but he's not exactly impressed either. There's something about the ritual that feels disconnected from the reality that he's living. Medals handed out under a burning sun, wreaths and pink citations, honors given in one language and translated into another. It's all part of the pageantry, the war as a series of photo ops and rehearsed moments, even for the soldiers living in it. What strikes me most about this moment is how little Popi seems to care about the recognition. He doesn't even mention what the medal is for. There's no pride, no bragging. Just an acknowledgement that it happened, and a request that the citation not get lost. He's not asking Suzie to hang it on the wall. He just wants to keep it with the rest of his things. Another scrap for the memory box. Another line in a letter, another performance. And then there's R&R, rest and recuperation, which he's about to take again. 2 nights in Saigon. No details, no anticipation, no plans. Just as simple, I guess I'll be going to Saigon tonight. It reads less like a break and more like a chore. Another movement in the script, another scene to get through before the next mission. It makes me wonder how often he felt like he was playing a part in someone else's war. Showing up to the right places, saying the right things, being congratulated for actions he doesn't elaborate on or really understand. I think about what it must be like to be told you're brave when all you feel is tired. Or to be honored for something you didn't choose to do. Or to accept a medal from someone you don't know. For something you don't fully understand. Maybe it was the heat. Maybe it was the language barrier. Maybe it was just the exhaustion. But this letter, with its short sentences and quick transitions, makes it clear that sometimes the hardest thing about war isn't what happens in combat. It's everything else around it. The performances, the pretense, the pressure to act like it's all normal. Let's not forget that the most recent ceremony he had attended at this point was the joint funeral for his 4 friends who were killed, one whose body took days to recover. When you're taking breaks from fighting to celebrate battles and mourn the dead, do you even enjoy these ceremonies? Do these begin to blur? Do you realize that you're celebrating your triumphs, killing the enemy, completing missions, saving the day, while contrarily you're mourning when the other side does the same thing? The photo I chose for today depicts what appears to be a large group of schoolgirls in long white dresses with large conical hats. We've seen them before. In the foreground of the photo, we see young children running around in a bit of land which has been farmed. One thing I find interesting to discuss with these sorts of photos is how the people of Vietnam may or may not be depicted as part of the landscape. He rarely mentions any native Vietnamese people, but when he does, in this letter, the women are dressed traditionally and used as props to enhance the ceremony and add to the pageantry of the medal. Are they simply just something to make the ceremony feel more meaningful? Or do they have a legitimate place in the pageantry? Does any of this really matter if they're not the focus of the story? Similarly, think about the Charlie in the trees saying that helps define the conflict. Aren't those people also painted as a part of the landscape, even if they are a dangerous one? April 1965. Dearest Suzie, well, I am back to work now after a real quiet break in Saigon. I had 3 letters and 2 cards waiting for me from you, so I feel good about that. I enjoyed my trip to Saigon, I guess. At least it was better than here. I looked up a bunch of old friends yesterday. Yesterday afternoon, Al Guthrie and I went to the Saigon Zoo. I never would have thought they had one there, but they do, and it was in a real beautiful park. I want to go back there one day when I have a camera. Al has a motorcycle now, so he really gets around in Saigon, and I think he got a kick out of showing me around. We had pizza last night for supper. It was real good. Then last night, after I went back to the villa, he came back over with Fox, and we just sat around and talked till midnight. I don't know if you remember Fox or not. There is a new company coming over here, by the way. They will be here the 30th of this month, and they will be going to Soc Trang. Some of the people who are coming with them are Church, Triedas, Furnitz, Scott, our next-door neighbor. Remember Wagner, the little wise ass that nobody liked? And a lot others. I thought I would die laughing when I heard Church was coming. Oh yes, my old buddy Kidney is coming. Can you imagine that group in the same company? Luckily, when they get here, they will be split up. I'll bet Judy Church is fit to be tied. She is going to have to get along by herself, and that will drive her nuts. And how about Kidney's wife? I'm surprised that he is still in the army, but since he is, this will probably be the best thing that could happen to him. Maybe give her a chance to grow up. Well, look at me sit here and gossip like some old woman, huh? Well, anyway, this new company gives us all something to look forward to. We have an operation tomorrow, and it starts real early. We have to get up at 7:30, so I'm going to bed soon. I love you all very much and miss you very much. Time is dragging. I love hearing what the boys are doing and how they are getting along. All my love, Bill. In this letter, Popi writes from base after returning from a short R&R trip to Saigon. The tone of the letter is casual, almost chatty, and full of familiar names and little observations. It's not a war story, really. No rockets, no missions, no casualties. But it might be one of the most revealing letters yet. Not because of what happens, but because of what doesn't. Popi spends a few paragraphs catching Suzie up on his time in the city. He got 3 letters and 2 cards from her, which lifted his spirits. He visited the Saigon Zoo, sat around talking late into the night with old friends, and even had pizza for dinner. He makes a point of saying it was good, like it surprised him that pizza in Vietnam could feel familiar. But what stands out most in this letter is how much time he spends reminiscing about people. Names like Guthrie, Fox, Kidney, Church, and Wagner. It's almost like he's flipping through a yearbook out loud. Some of the names come with judgment, others with laughter. He's clearly amused by the chaos that's about to unfold when this new company arrives at the end of the month. A cast of characters that would have felt right at home in a workplace sitcom, or MASH, or something like that. And he knows it. He ends the section with the self-aware line, "Well, look at me sit here and gossip like some old woman, huh?" It all really reminds me of when I go back to my hometown and visit friends I haven't seen in a long while. We reminisce, we chat, talk about people we used to know and where they are now. Popi's words feel so normal. It's amazing. It's funny, but it also says a lot, because this letter isn't really about Saigon or the people coming to Soc Trang. It's about time. Time dragging, time stretching out, and the things you do to fill it when war quiets down for a bit. Popi is trying to keep his mind moving, trying to keep his pen moving, trying to feel like the hours are building towards something instead of just piling up behind him. There's a quiet homesickness running through this letter. It's not dramatic, he doesn't spell it out, but you can feel it in the way he clings to small details. A good pizza, a night of conversation, a zoo in a beautiful park, a list of people he used to know. In a place where most days feel like repeats of the last, these moments, even the gossipy ones, are something to hold on to. And he's doing what we all would do when we're stuck in something hard. He talks about other people, he pokes fun, he keeps the tone light. But buried in the last lines is the heart of the letter. Time is dragging, he writes. I love hearing what the boys are doing and how they are getting along. That's what he really wants. To be home. To be part of the little things again. To see a school play. To buy a new pair of little shoes. To eat a family dinner. The photo I chose for today depicts 3 soldiers sitting outside of a hooch during the day. They're relaxing, smoking cigarettes, chatting. It's a picture depicting what a few soldiers would look like passing the time, catching up, asking how everyone from the old company is doing. Perhaps this is similar to what Popi saw when he saw his friends. "155 to go. 21. April. Dearest Suzie, I don't know what is wrong with the mail system over here, but I didn't get a letter for the past 3 days. I'm sure it must be the service, though. We had a mission yesterday, but it didn't amount to anything. We didn't get a person, we have another one tomorrow, and I don't know how it will be. I'm looking forward to that new company coming to Soc Trang. It will be nice to see all the guys again. Today was real slow. I worked on my operations office this morning, painting and moving things around. Then this afternoon we went to the range for about an hour. I still haven't heard from Minnie. Does she still write and call you like she was before? Well, news is very short. I hate to write such short letters, but at least you can know I'm thinking of you. Of course, if I wrote every time I thought of you, it would take everything I make to buy paper and stamps. One thing I want to do when I get home is for all of us to pack up one day and take a fishing pole apiece and go down to some little creek and just fish all day. Miss you all very much, and love you. All my love. Bill. P.S. If you don't get one of the Orlando papers, I wish you would and check it every day, and get someone else to check the other one. Our information officer sends a lot of pictures of us to our hometown papers. Love. Bill. A few years ago, I had the opportunity to go to the Library of Congress and do some research. I still have my Library of Congress library card. Among other things, while I was there, I decided to look for any mention of Popi in their newspaper archives. Though I've been told Popi did make the Orlando Sentinel once or twice, the only mention I found of him in a national newspaper came in an article published on May 28th, written by Arthur Vesey in the Chicago Tribune. As an example of what Popi was talking about, please allow me the opportunity to read that article for you now. Troops break up rest area of Viet Cong. Duc Ton, Vietnam, May 27. There's a section of the Kim Mai Canal east of here that the Communist Viet Cong, the VC, regard as their private R&R area. In Army talk, R&R stands for rest and recreation, so the letters are popular in any man's army. I suppose they like it because they consider it fairly safe, said Captain James Lincoln, Washington, D.C., who heads a 5-man American team sent here to help spread peace through a widely scattered rice farming community of about 50,000. The stretch of canal, the captain said, is outside the range of artillery. It can, in the dry season, be reached only by small boats or by foot. The nearest Home Guard troops are here at Duckdon, a hard 2-hour walk. Ask civilians to leave. For a month, the government has been dropping leaflets urging the canal people to leave, and about a third of them have done so, but it's hard for any family to part with its land, its home, its garden, the spirits of ancestors assumed to be still hovering about. Until all peaceful-minded folk have left the canal, the government and its American advisors don't want to start bombing there. One evening, word came into Duckdon that 300 or more VC had arrived along the canal and were settling down for a quiet time between operations in the Delta. The command decided this was making too much of a good thing. 10 or 20, yes, but 300? Troops on move early. So by 4 a.m., government troops were on the move. Captain Lincoln and 100 Home Guards headed east on foot. Clovis Jackson, Kenosha, Wisconsin, an Army medic for 12 years, went along. Some regular infantrymen, with Captain Alvin Broyles, Johnson City, Tennessee, were taken by truck as far as the road went and then started walking up the canal more from the south. More infantrymen came down the canal from the north in small boats. Armored carriers, the nearest thing Vietnam has to tanks, began making a wide sweep from the southwest. The troops' American advisor, a young lieutenant, was in Hong Kong on his own R&R, so Captain Victor Kelly, a native of Wichita, Kansas, and a former Tucson, Arizona high school teacher, took his place. With him went a young Englishman named William Abbott, who joined the American Army on condition he could come to Vietnam. He now is a sergeant, though still a subject of the Queen. Finds empty houses. Everybody was in place at dawn. All started moving in the R&R area. The sun, blood red as it came up over the dry rice fields, revealed ominous signs. Nobody was about, in the houses, in the gardens, out in the fields. The caribou had disappeared. Even the skinny dogs were gone. The stillness meant some VC were there, although most of the 300 had probably left. The infantrymen moved slowly, searching houses, gardens, water jugs, and heavy foliage along the canal. The armored carriers swept along an adjoining canal, found no foe, and started down another canal. About noon, both columns, about 2 miles apart on the canal, came under fire. The VC were so well hidden that they let part of the southern column pass before they started shooting. That meant infantry and VC were all mixed up, so the infantry couldn't merely spray every thicket in hope to hit a VC. More likely, they would hit a buddy. Felled by sniper shots. About 1 o'clock, Captain Broyles walked from a house he had been searching and started on the edge of a fishing pond. From across the canal, 3 sniper shots felled him. The news quickly reached division headquarters at Sadek, about 12 miles to the north. Captain Thomas Garrigan, Winnemac, Indiana, ran to the mess hall, found a helicopter crew there, and was on the way to help Broyles. In another 10 minutes, he was over the battlefield. He radioed down, asking where Broyles lay. No one knew. The crew sat down in a rice field, outside rifle range. The armored carriers with Captain Kelly and the Englishmen had already abandoned their search of minor canals and were crossing open rice fields to the R&R area, ignoring the possibility that the VC there might have recoilless rifles, which are murder to the lightly plated vehicles. Goes in on foot. The Hoosier radioed Kelly, but couldn't reach him. Another copter in the sky heard, and its pilot, Warrant Officer William Lowie, Orlando, Florida, called down to Kelly. Kelly's carrier reached the trees about 50 yards from the canal bank. "This thing can't go any farther," he radioed. "I'm taking a squad and going on to find Broyles." He took only 2 troopers. They found the particular stretch of canal quiet and separated to search for Broyles. The 2 Vietnamese found him. They crawled along the fish pond, reached down the bank, and tried to pull him out. They couldn't budge him. For Broyles was a big man, more than 200 pounds, more than the 2 Vietnamese weighed together. Lift's body, killed. Kelly saw them and came over, but neither could he drag Broyles up the bank. So he went down the bank, bent and grabbed the body, for Broyles was dead, under the arms and started to lift him the professional weightlifter way, knees bent, back straight, and upright. But as Kelly was rising, the sniper struck with 3 more shots. 1 bullet pierced Kelly's metal helmet, and Broyles' body slipped back into the mud, with Kelly's on top of it. The command called upon Rangers, veteran troubleshooters. About 240 of them loaded up in helicopters, and Cobra gunships escorted them to the dry rice fields. Shoot from the hip. The Rangers formed one long line and ran for the trees, directly into the face of the VC. They shot from the hip as they ran and shouted. The VC, who had been careful in picking off single targets, now fired everything they had. Bullets poured across the fields. Some 20 Rangers, 1 in 10, dropped, 3 of them dead, but the rest ran on. They reached the brush and trees and houses and gardens and fish ponds. For 10 minutes there was a wild scene, Rangers and VC meeting little more than rifle barrel apart. 3 more Rangers died, but all VC who exposed themselves also died. They numbered only about a dozen. By evening, all was quiet. 36 VC bodies were stacked up for burial. 7 VC were taken prisoner. Several weapons seized. The cost was 15 Vietnamese soldiers and the 2 Americans dead. More than a score of Vietnamese wounded. I'm sure we may or may not hear about this story from Popi in May, but I look forward to seeing if we do. The photo I chose for today is likely his operations office. There is an American flag, a desk, and many posters on the wall which look like they aid in planning their operations. '23, April. Dearest Suzie, I finally got a letter from you late last night. We got a batch of mail in, and I had 1 letter. I was sorry to hear about Uncle Otto. Tell them that for me, will you? I know Dad thought an awful lot of him. I hope this letter finds you and the boys doing okay. Does Brian still miss his dad? How did Billy do in his school play? I guess they have had it by now. We were called out on an alert this morning. The VC had killed 1 American and wounded 2 others. Of course, all the VC had gone time we got out there, but we spent all day looking for them anyway. We have another big award ceremony tomorrow morning. I will get 4 oak leaf clusters to my air medal. Big deal. I would trade all of them for a plane ticket home. Oh well. Tomorrow we have 5 months to wait. I miss you all very much. I love you more every day, if that is possible. All my love, Bill. If Popi's letter from April 23rd feels weary, more focused on counting down months than tallying medals, it's worth considering what has happened beyond his immediate world in those same days. As he prepared to receive 4 more oak leaf clusters for his air medal, some of the most powerful political and military minds in the U.S. government were gathered in Honolulu, trying to make sense of the conflict's future. The decisions they made that week would change everything, even if Popi couldn't see it yet. On April 20th, Ambassador Maxwell Taylor proposed a shift in military strategy, one that was quickly adopted by President Johnson and supported by top brass like Robert McNamara, William Bundy, and General Westmoreland. The plan was known as the Enclave Strategy. The idea was to contain U.S. ground operations within a 50-mile radius of strategic coastal cities and air bases, leaving the rest of the countryside, the rural, deeply contested areas, to South Vietnamese forces. It was a compromise, meant to limit American exposure while still holding key territory. But the reality on the ground didn't cooperate. Viet Cong forces didn't stay put. The war didn't follow neat boundaries, and the ARVN, already struggling, couldn't hold the lines on their own. The Enclave strategy began to unravel almost immediately. By June, Taylor had resigned, and the U.S. shifted again, this time embracing the much more aggressive search and destroy strategy that would come to define the next phase of the war. Then, just 2 days later, McNamara stirred international outrage during an off-the-record briefing with journalists. When pressed about the limits of American escalation, he refused to rule out the use of nuclear weapons in Vietnam. His exact words weren't printed, that was the agreement, but New York Times reporter Tom Wicker paraphrased the comments. If conventional bombing couldn't destroy a target, they'd keep escalating. 100 planes, then 200. Nuclear weapons, McNamara said, weren't off the table. They were simply the last option in a long list. The backlash came fast. In a speech at the United Nations, Soviet Ambassador Nikolai Fedorenko blasted the United States for what he called its willingness to once again consider nuclear war on an Asian population. The ghost of Hiroshima hung heavy over the rhetoric. Indelible shame, Fedorenko warned, would follow another atomic strike. The use of atomic weapons in World War II, after all, occurred only 20 years before these comments. And on April 23rd, the same day Popi wrote that he'd trade all his medals for a plane ticket, Ambassador Taylor sent a report back to Washington. South Vietnamese Prime Minister Phan Huy Quat, he wrote, was hesitant about accepting even more American troops. He worried, perhaps rightly, that the presence of too many foreign soldiers would turn public opinion further against the South's fragile government. And still, the build-up continued. At this point, there were about 33,000 American personnel in Vietnam. 20,000 more were already en route. All of this happened while Popi was fixing up his operations office, flying out on a fruitless search for the VC, and thinking about how much he missed his boys. He doesn't mention McNamara. He doesn't mention Taylor. He just says that he was 5 months from going home, and that he'd trade every last ribbon on his chest if it meant getting there sooner. The photo I chose for today shows a building on the ocean. There are cars, jeeps, parked in front of it. Behind them, the land juts out into the ocean. The water in the foreground is bashing up against rocks. Based on similar photos taken by Popi, it could be Vietnam, or it could be Hawaii. Who knows? April 24. Dearest Suzie, I got a letter from you today and was so glad to hear from you, I thought I would sit right down and answer. I'm glad you and the boys didn't have to spend Easter alone. I bet you all really had a good Easter. You mentioned that Carol was out there for the Easter egg hunt. Isn't that Lois's little girl? Where was that little boy? I don't remember his name, but I do know that he was a mean little guy and haven't heard anything about Sandy yet. If I had known that he was in Saigon, I would have looked him up the other day. I don't know when I will ever get up there again. Well, it is Saturday afternoon and we are not very busy. In fact, it is too hot to do anything but sit under a fan very still. In fact, it is so hot that Bud Bender and I got to feeling sorry for Charlie and Doll this afternoon. So we got a big tub and put it in their cage and filled it with water. Doll got up on the edge and jumped in. She really got a kick out of swimming around. Just like a kid. She even swims underwater with her eyes open. It really surprised me. I didn't think that they would like water. Charlie is scared to death of it. He is more like I expected a monkey to act. Anyway, he won't get near the water. Well, Friday is payday, and of course I already have my money spent as soon as I get it. Payday, I want to get myself a camera. Also, I had a suit made this month, and it is a beauty. I paid $145 for it. It is made of Italian silk and would probably cost $150 at home. It will be ready to pick up payday. I had to go to town 3 times for fitting. They take a lot of pains with the suit. By the way, I never did get that picture I asked you for. What is the holdup? As I told you before, we got a free 7-day leave while we are over here. I wasn't planning to take mine. In fact, if I could take it when I come home, I wouldn't even think of it now. But if I don't take it, I will lose that time, and by now I hate this place so bad I will take any opportunity to get out of here. So I was thinking maybe I will go to Hong Kong in June or July. There's nothing that I want from there, but it is not Vietnam. So whatever month I decide to go, probably July, I want to keep our extra check that month. Anyway, that is 2 months off, so I'll let you know for sure later. Well, I guess I'd better close for now. I don't want to spoil you. This is 2 letters in 2 days. First thing you know, you'll be thinking you're a big deal or something. As far as I'm concerned, you are. I love you very much. Kiss the boys for me. All my love. Bill. In today's letter, Popi is writing from what sounds like a quiet, painfully hot afternoon in Vinh Long. There's no mission on the docket, no combat news to report, no emergencies in the air. Just a fan blowing warm air and 2 monkeys trying to beat the heat. According to the internet, it was probably in the mid-90s, which I'm sure paired with the humidity was pretty bad. He tells a story about Charlie and Doll, the monkeys, who got a special treatment that afternoon. He and another soldier filled a tub with water in the heat, and Doll immediately jumped in. She swam around like a child, even dipping underwater with her eyes open, something that surprised him. Charlie, on the other hand, wanted nothing to do with it. He's more like I expected a monkey to act, Popi writes, scared to death of it. I love this detail. Not just because it's funny, but because it's one of the only letters where we see Popi and another soldier doing something purely for the sake of kindness and for fun. It almost feels like they're normal 28-year-old guys just trying to do something for entertainment. Then comes a classic Popi line. Payday is Friday, and of course I already have my money spent. This month, the big purchase is a suit. For a man who spent most of his deployment covered in sweat and dust, this suit feels like something special. Not just a garment, but a symbol of self-care, of dignity, of imagining himself in a world beyond this one. I still have an old jacket of his. It's burgundy, and we have a few photos of him wearing it to weddings and other special events when he was younger. Could it be the one he mentions here? He also talks about the idea of taking his 7-day R&R. Everyone stationed in Vietnam was entitled to one, but Popi originally wasn't going to use his. He figured if he could just save that time and roll it into his return home, it would be worth it, but at this point, after months of monotony, anxiety, and grief, he's changing his mind. I hate this place so bad, he writes. I'll take any opportunity to get out of here. He's thinking about going to Hong Kong, not because he has anything he wants from there, but because it's just not Vietnam. That's what escape looks like now. Not a vacation, not a bucket list city, just not where he was. The photo I chose for today actually depicts Charlie and Doll in their cage. It is clearly made of recycled materials. If you look closely, you can see their little swimming pool beneath them, the same one described in this letter. April 1965. Dearest Suzie, well, today was a long one for me. We took off this morning before daylight and got home tonight after the sunset. We chased the VC all day, but we didn't catch them. Probably just as well. If we had caught them, they might have fought back, and that would have been bad. Tomorrow we don't have anything. That is nothing planned. Why aren't you planning a birthday party for Billy? Tell him that I will send him a birthday present, but it will be a little late. Also, I still didn't get the boys' sizes or your picture that I asked you for. I still haven't heard from Minnie, and I haven't heard anything from Sandy. I owe your mother a letter yet. I will get around to writing her soon. There's so very little over here to write to anyone about. I have enough trouble getting a page to you every other day, and this is a very boring life. Not boring, really, but not something that you can write home about. Well, I will close for tonight, sending you all my love. I miss you all very much. Sincerely, Bill. When President Dwight D. Eisenhower gave his farewell address in January 1961, he didn't go out with a celebration. He left with a warning. One that, looking back, feels eerily prophetic. After leading the country through World War II as a 5-star general and spending 8 years in the White House during the early years of the Cold War, Eisenhower had seen enough of what war looked like from the top down. And what worried him wasn't just the arms race with the Soviet Union. It was what he called the military-industrial complex. This phrase wasn't some offhand comment. It was carefully chosen. Eisenhower was speaking about the growing relationship between the military establishment, the federal government, and private industry, particularly defense contractors. He warned that the nation must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought by the military-industrial complex. And more than that, he worried that the country might come to rely too heavily on war, or the preparation for it, as a driver of economic and political power. What Eisenhower was describing was the emergence of a permanent war economy, one where companies didn't just supply weapons for a single conflict, but built their entire business model around continuous military demand, and one where politicians found themselves incentivized to keep those companies funded because they provided jobs, stimulated local economies, and backed congressional campaigns. It created a feedback loop. The military asked for more tools, industry built them, and government footed the bill. And if there wasn't an active war, there needed to be the threat of one. Fast forward just a few years to Vietnam, and you start to see exactly what Eisenhower was afraid of. The war in Vietnam became one of the most lucrative periods in history for U.S. defense contractors. Bell Helicopter, the company behind the UH-1 Huey, the aircraft Popi flew, saw its production explode. Before the war, Bell was making a few helicopters a month. By the late 1960s, they were producing over 200 a month. Between 1966 and 1971, they delivered more than 12,000 Hueys to the U.S. government. Each one required an army of subcontractors, maintenance parts, specialized tools, and logistical infrastructure. Every combat mission, like the ones Popi flew daily, sustained a vast network of production back home. And it wasn't just helicopters. Dow Chemical supplied the napalm, Monsanto produced Agent Orange, DuPont made explosives, General Dynamics, Lockheed Martin, McConnell Douglas, all of them expanded their defense operations during the war. Some of them made billions. Their profits weren't dependent on a clear victory. They were tied to the war's continuation. Meanwhile, Popi was flying through heat and gunfire, patching up helicopters in the mud, and writing home about how he'd trade every single medal on his chest for a plane ticket home. He wasn't part of the business of war. He was its labor. His letters don't mention defense companies. They don't talk about strategy meetings or contract negotiations. They talk about the smell of the air, the sweat behind his knees, the way a mission felt more like waiting than fighting. But whether he knew it or not, he was part of the machine Eisenhower had warned about. Even his equipment was part of it. The radio he used to call in support, the rockets he launched at unseen targets, the flak jackets they wore, and the fuel that kept the birds in the air, every single part had a $sign attached. Someone made it, someone got paid for it, and none of those people were out in the field, staring at the jungle, wondering whether today would be the day someone didn't come back. This isn't a conspiracy theory, it's a structural reality, one that still shapes American foreign policy to this day. The problem with the military-industrial complex isn't just that it exists. It's that it creates conditions where war can start to seem normal, necessary, even desirable. Not for the people fighting it, but for the institutions feeding off it. Popi didn't write about any of this directly, but he didn't have to. It's there between the lines. In the boredom, in the bitterness, in the way he says he's counting down the months, in the way he talks about medals like they're scrap, in the way he says over and over again that he just wants to be home. There are no defense contracts in these letters. Just a man stuck in a war that seemed designed to last forever. What we've seen with these letters thus far is an on-the-ground, personal perspective of how these things can affect someone. The result of where these relationships can lead. But how bad can all of this get for one person? Maybe we'll answer that question next episode? The photo I chose for today is awesome. It's a whole line of Hueys. There are so many that they fade into the background. There's another line behind them. In the air, one is circling around. "29 April. Dearest Suzie, first thing, I apologize for not writing yesterday. I know it will be at least 3 days for you between letters, and I don't like to go that long. I know how I feel when I don't hear from you regularly. As I probably told you before, I am operations officer for the platoon. Yesterday, I gave myself a day off. We had a big mission, and I had every aircraft but one flying. But I had enough pilots, so I planned to take it easy. I slept in and didn't even get up till 10 o'clock. Then I did a little work, and at noon, I went to the club to eat lunch. After that, I planned to come in and put on my bathing suit, lay out in the sun, and write you a nice, long letter. Just as I put on my bathing suit, I got a call from operations. The VC had killed an American captain near here, and they needed 2 gunships to go out and escort somebody in to pick him up. I told them that I only had 1 gunship, and it was a hog, but they wanted me to go anyway. They got a ship from the 62nd to go with me, since it is against the law to send 1 gunship out alone, so I agreed to take the mission. We got into the area, and there were more VC than you could shake a stick at. We flew over them, trying to find the areas where the dead American was, and we got the living hell shot out of us. And I couldn't look back at them, because there were other American troops on the ground, and friendly troops, and I didn't know exactly where they were. I never felt so frustrated in my life. Really, at that time, I thought the captain, who I knew very well, was just injured, and I wanted to get him out. We flew around for an hour, and I finally decided that we couldn't get him. There was a company of armored personnel carriers near the area where this American was supposed to be, and I called them and asked for help. The American advisor to that company was another good friend of mine, named Kelly. I got him on the radio and asked him to try to get to the wounded man, I later learned he was already dead, out of that area and back into an open area so we could pick him up. He told me that he would try. He had 10 troop carriers. They can pretty well stand up to light small arms weapon fire, so I sat back and watched him advance towards the tree line where the wounded man was. He was getting shot at all the time, and I could see the mortar fire falling around him, but he kept up and got into the area. We all expected the Vietnamese troops to bring the wounded man to the personnel carriers, but they didn't. Kelly sat there for about 5 minutes, and when they didn't show up, he called me again. He said that he was going out to look for the wounded captain and that I could buy them a beer when this was over. I agreed and told him we were ready to come in when he called us back. As he stepped out of his APC, a sniper hit him in the head. He died instantly. I stayed in the area as long as I could. We got low on fuel and we never did get them out. I've never felt as bad about anything as I do about this. I flew 4 hours and a half yesterday and last night. When I finally got in last night, I proceeded to get stinking drunk. I bought the beer all right. But the guy who should have been there to help drink it wasn't. And I feel responsible. I asked him to do something that I should have either done myself or not had done at all. I was in command at the time, since the gunship fire team leader is supposed to be able to see everything that is going on and is in a position to make decisions. And I think I screwed it up awfully. As you can probably tell, I'm still boozing it up to ease the thought that might have saved one or both of those men if I had a little more experience or used better judgment. I know that I shouldn't write this sort of thing to you, honey, but you are my conscience, I guess, and I had to get it off my mind. Please forgive me, but these two were good friends. I'm doing okay. I hope that you have a birthday party for Billy. I know you will. Also, I know that Mother's Day is the 9th, and I will send you something. I thought about sending you that princess ring, but it is so pretty to me, and I want to bring it to you. But in case it is a little late, don't worry. I will send you something, and it won't be a bag of peanuts. I love you very much. Tell the boys that I miss them. Do you feed Brett coffee? Does he drink it? I miss you so much. Sincerely, Bill. As a grandson, as an anthropologist, as a historian, as a reader, I feel there isn't much I can say here. He says it all. What he doesn't say, you can feel. It's hard to read this one without crying. All I can really say is that this pain he feels is real. He never stops feeling it. Unfortunately, it seems he may have made others feel it as well. Is today the worst letter he wrote? Maybe. I guess we'll have to see. The photo I chose for today is an action shot, taken from his helicopter. It depicts 3 other helicopters touching down in what looks to be a rice paddy. Soldiers are running out of the middle one. Perhaps this was a similar scene to what is described in today's letter. April. Dearest Suzie, I feel a lot better today than I did yesterday. Sorry for crying on your shoulder, but I was really upset. We had another operation today and had a lot better outcome. In fact, you've probably heard about it on TV. The Vietnamese captured an awful lot of big weapons today. We were overhead and listened while they reported it. It really made us feel good. They got so many weapons they couldn't count them all. That's the way this war is. You lose one day and win the next. The doctor met me when I got in tonight with bad news. Charlie had raided a Jeep and got into some razor blades and tried to eat them. He didn't cut his mouth, but he did cut his hand. The doctor caught him and was going to clean it up for him since I wasn't there. Anyway, when he got Charlie in the dispensary, he got scared and wet on the dock. The doc lost his hold on him and Charlie got away. They couldn't catch him again, so they finally opened the door and let him out. He did say the cut wasn't bad, though. This paper I'm sending you is a short timer's calendar. When you get down to 100 days, you are supposed to start marking the days off. I have one, and I thought you might get a kick out of one of them. June 16th is the 100th day if you want to keep track. Well, I guess I will close for tonight. I didn't get a letter from you yesterday or today, but I blame it on the system. Did you get Billy a watch? I love you all very much, and I miss you. All my love. Bill. In this letter, we meet Popi on the other side of a breaking point. This letter doesn't read like a victory lap, even though he describes what sounds like a successful mission. You probably heard about it on TV, he writes. South Vietnamese forces captured a massive haul of Viet Cong weapons, too many to count. From the sky, Popi listened to the reports roll in over the radio. It was a rare good day. A day where the operations didn't fall apart. A day where the enemy didn't get away entirely. But you can still feel the flatness behind the words. His heart wasn't in it. Not today. When he mentions the weapons haul and the countdown to going home, it's not just a quiet letter from a tired man. It's a man trying to put himself back together. Trying to convince himself that victories still count for something. That the work matters. That he isn't broken. That there's something to fight for. That someone needs him and that his suffering can be justified in some way at all. The losses of the Americans are for something. There's a short paragraph in this letter about Charlie, who managed to cut his hand on a razor blade and then pee on the medic who tried to help him. It's classic Charlie chaos. But even that story feels different now. Less funny. More fragile. Everything feels like it's holding together by a thread. Things are going so wrong that even Charlie is vulnerable in his own home. Popi also includes something with this letter, a short timer's calendar. One of those little rituals soldiers used to mark their last 100 days. He tells Suzie that June 16th will be his 100-day mark. If she wants, she can keep track alongside him. The letter before this one, from April 29th, is the one that really changes a lot of people's opinion of Popi. Those in my family who have chosen to read it, which is not everyone, have expressed how hard it was to hear. That they didn't know he went through something like that. That it explained so much. In fact, when we finally had Popi's ashes interred in March of 2020 at the Florida National Cemetery, we had a ceremony for him. If you ever want to visit him in Bushnell, he's buried in section 616 at site 462. Popi's brother and a few of my dad's cousins showed up alongside my parents, my brother, and Meemaw. My dad eulogized Popi. He had a rough relationship with his dad and referenced this specific letter from April 29th, asking why it had never been shared. My dad wished, through tears, even a decade after his dad's passing, that there was honesty, that there was truth, that people were open and willing to share. Had Popi talked about these things before his passing, would they have made him feel better? Would they have made the family closer, or would it have undone any of the pain he caused? Probably not. But it at least would have provided some perspective. It would have helped in understanding a complex, quiet, and fragile old man. Maybe one day I'll share my dad's eulogy with you. Maybe after he hears this, he'll let me know if he's comfortable with that. We'll see. Either way, I just want to state the obvious. He should not have been sorry for crying on his wife's shoulder. He had a right to be upset. If you're listening to this, and you need to hear it, please don't be afraid to cry on your loved one's shoulders. They're always going to be there for you. As for the loved ones, don't be afraid to ask for honesty. Be a person people are comfortable speaking to. You'll regret not doing it while you can. The photo I chose for today is of Charlie. He's sitting on gravel in a green little sweater or shirt. He's on a rope as a leash. At least here's some example of Charlie not running around on his own, causing chaos. Perhaps Popi began keeping him on this rope after he cut his hand. I'm Alex Lowie, and I hope you have enjoyed listening to this episode of Dearest Suzie, and receiving messages from the past that my Popi wrote exactly 60 years ago. I sincerely appreciate your time and interest. Please consider following the podcast on your preferred platform, and if you're enjoying it, I kindly ask that you take the time to rate the show and leave a review. Also, please follow the project on YouTube, X, and Instagram. All likes, comments, shares, and reviews will help grow the reach of this story. The links for these things should be in the description of this episode. Please feel free to email me at dearestsuziepodcast@gmail.com if you have anything you'd like to say. I'd love to chat or to hear about your stories as well. Thank you for listening, and God bless.